The twin Voidian sisters Mira and Tara stepped onto Nexus 7 space station, their blue skin shimmering under the bright lights. Each sister had 4 eyes, 2 large ones and 2 smaller ones above them. They moved with grace, their long fingers adjusting the formal clothes that marked them as important members of the Voidian collective. Another boring meeting, Mira said to her sister through their mental link. No one else could hear their private thoughts. Father expects us to be perfect, Tara replied, straightening her silver collar. The humans are coming today. Mira made a sound of disgust. Humans. They've barely been in space for 200 years. Why should they have a voice in galactic matters? The twins considered themselves far superior to humans. Their people had traveled between stars for thousands of years. They had powerful minds, stronger bodies, and lived much longer lives. Humans were weak, short-lived, and technologically behind. A station official named Hannah approached them with a respectful bow. Welcome, honored representatives. Your rooms are ready, and the meeting halls have been prepared according to Voidian preferences. Has there been any unusual activity? Tara asked, her upper eyes narrowing slightly. Hannah hesitated before answering. There have been some small problems with our sensors. Our engineers think it's just radiation from the nearby star causing interference. Make sure everything works properly before the meetings start, Mira ordered. Hannah bowed again. Of course. Please follow me to your quarters. As they walked through the gleaming corridors of the station, other aliens moved aside to let them pass. The Voidians were known and feared throughout this part of the galaxy. Their technology was advanced, and their military power was significant. 27 species will attend the peace talks, Tara noted, reviewing information on her wrist device, including humans for the first time. A waste of a seat, Mira replied. What could they possibly contribute? Their quarters were large and comfortable, with special lighting adjusted to the Voidian spectrum. The gravity was set slightly higher than Earth standard, matching their home world. Station Administrator Sung will host a welcome dinner in 3 hours, Tara said, unpacking their diplomatic materials. All major representatives will attend. Mira moved to the window, looking out at the stars. I've studied the human delegation. Their leader is inexperienced, and their military escort is minimal. They clearly don't understand the dangers they face in galactic politics. A soft chime announced a visitor. When the door slid open, a small service robot entered with refreshments. Your preferred nutrients, as requested, the robot said, placing a tray on the table. The liquid inside the containers glowed with a pale purple light. After the robot left, the sisters conducted a security sweep of their quarters, checking for listening devices or other surveillance. It was standard procedure for Voidian diplomats. Clean, Tara announced. Though their security systems are primitive, I could bypass them easily if needed. Let's review our objectives, Mira said, activating a holographic display. Images of various alien species appeared, along with data about their political positions and weaknesses. The Arcturus Coalition is pushing for expanded mining rights in the Orion sector, Tara noted. That conflicts with our interests. And the Centauri Republic is seeking technological exchange agreements with the newer species, Mira added with displeasure, including humans. As evening approached, the sisters changed into their formal diplomatic attire. Flowing garments of silver and blue that complemented their skin tone and featured the geometric patterns of their house. Remember what Father said, Tara told her sister as they prepared to leave. These peace talks are crucial for our expansion plans. We must appear cooperative while giving up nothing important. Mira nodded. And we must evaluate the human threat. Their rapid advancement concerns the elders. The welcoming dinner was held in a large hall with views of the nearby nebula. Representatives from dozens of species mingled, their translators allowing for conversation despite vastly different biologies and languages. The twins entered together, causing a momentary hush as others noticed their presence. The Voidians rarely attended such gatherings in person, usually sending lower-level diplomats instead. Administrator Sung approached immediately. "Honored representatives, thank you for gracing us with your presence. May I introduce you to the other delegates?" As they moved through the room, the sisters noted the different alliances forming. The reptilian Drakon ambassador was speaking intently with the insectoid Krell, traditional enemies now finding common ground. "The humans haven't arrived yet," Terra observed. Mira's antennae twitched slightly. Perhaps they realized they don't belong here. Just then, the main doors opened and the human delegation entered. Their leader, a woman named Sue, walked confidently despite being surrounded by beings twice her size. Behind her walked a tall, serious-looking man in a simple dark uniform. "That must be their military escort," Terra said. Unimpressive. But something about the human soldier caught Mira's attention. While the others looked around with barely concealed wonder, his eyes were alert, analyzing. He scanned the room methodically, noting exits and potential threats with practiced efficiency. For a brief moment, his eyes met Mira's, and she was surprised to see no fear there, just calm assessment. Perhaps, Mira thought to herself, these humans are not as simple as we believed. As the night continued, neither twin noticed the small device placed under their table, quietly copying their secure communications, nor did they see the human soldier slip away briefly during the dinner, moving with purpose through the station's service corridors. The peace conference had begun, but something else was unfolding in the shadows of Nexus 7. Mira woke suddenly in the darkness of their quarters. Something had disturbed her sleep, a feeling that something was wrong. She listened carefully, her sensitive hearing picking up only the soft hum of the station's systems. "Terra," she whispered through their mental link. "Are you awake?" Her sister rolled over in the adjacent bed, her 4 eyes blinking open. "Yes. I feel it too." The twins could sense disturbances in energy fields, a natural ability of their species. Right now, something was interfering with the station's power grid in subtle, deliberate ways. "The security system," Terra said, checking her wrist device. 3 sections have gone dark in the past hour." Mira slipped out of bed and into her flexible defense suit. "Not a malfunction. Someone is moving through the station undetected." Within minutes, the sisters were gliding silently through the dimmed corridors of Nexus 7's night cycle. Most delegates were asleep, leaving the station quiet except for the skeleton crew of maintenance workers and security personnel. There, Terra pointed with a slender blue finger. The environmental control panel at the junction ahead showed signs of tampering. Mira examined it closely. Bypassed, not damage. Professional work. They followed the trail of subtle disturbances. A security camera turned slightly off-axis, an access panel left a millimeter ajar. A barely perceptible footprint in the dust of a rarely used maintenance shaft. "The intruder is heading toward the data center," Terra realized as they tracked the signs. "That's where all diplomatic communications are stored." The sisters moved faster now, their natural agility allowing them to traverse the corridors without making a sound. As they approached the central data hub, they caught a glimpse of a shadow moving ahead. "Split up," Mira commanded. "I'll circle around." They coordinated perfectly, having trained together since childhood. Terra continued straight ahead, while Mira used a service ladder to reach the level above, planning to trap the intruder between them. When Mira dropped down from an access hatch, she found herself face to face with the intruder, the human soldier from the welcoming dinner. He wore a dark-fitted suit with minimal equipment, nothing like the bulky armor she expected from humans. "Don't move," she ordered, her translator converting her natural high-pitched language to standard speech. Her hands glowed with the blue energy of Voidian defensive capabilities. The human remained surprisingly calm. He slowly raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. "I'm not here to fight." Terra appeared from the opposite corridor, effectively cutting off his escape. "Identify yourself, human." "Lieutenant June, Earth Special Forces," he replied evenly. His eyes darted between the twins, assessing but not panicking. "What are you doing in a restricted area during the sleep cycle?" Mira demanded. June's face remained composed. The same thing you are, I suspect. Investigating security anomalies. Tara scoffed. We are official security liaisons for this conference. You are trespassing. Strange coincidence that you both felt the need to conduct your investigation in secret without alerting station security, June observed. Mira stepped closer, her larger primary eyes fixed on the human. She reached out with her mind, attempting to sense his thoughts, a basic ability of her species that worked on most beings. To her shock, her mental probe couldn't penetrate his consciousness. It was like trying to see through a wall. You're shielded, she said, unable to hide her surprise. June tapped a small device at his temple, almost invisible against his skin. Standard equipment when dealing with telepathic species. We respect privacy. Tara moved closer, her stance aggressive. A spy would need such protection. Or someone who values their thoughts remaining their own, June countered. He lowered his hand slightly. I'm not your enemy. There are irregularities in the station's security that concern my government. Then why not report them officially? Mira asked. Because we don't know who to trust yet, June replied honestly. This is humanity's first major interstellar conference. We're being cautious. As they faced off in the dimly lit corridor, a soft beeping came from June's wrist device. His eyes widened slightly as he checked it. We have a problem, he said urgently. Someone else is accessing the main security grid, and they're not being nearly as careful as I was. Before either twin could respond, June reached into his pocket. Mira raised her hand defensively, blue energy crackling around her fingers, but instead of a weapon, June pulled out a small silver disc. Look, he said, projecting a holographic display that showed the station's security systems. Red warning indicators flashed across multiple sections. Those are the delegate quarters, Tara said, recognizing the layout. Someone's bypassing the security locks, June confirmed. All of them. Simultaneously. The realization hit Mira suddenly. The delegates are being targeted. June nodded grimly. We need to. The lights around them flickered, and the faint background hum of the station's systems faltered momentarily. Too late, June muttered. He made a quick decision and tossed something small toward the twins' feet. Mira recognized the danger too late. Shield your. A brilliant flash of light erupted, temporarily overwhelming their sensitive eyes. The twins staggered back, momentarily blinded. When their vision cleared seconds later, the human was gone. Impossible, Tara hissed. No human should move that quickly. Mira was already rushing toward the main corridor. We need to alert security. About the human intruder? Tara asked, following closely. No, Mira replied, her face grim. About whoever is targeting the delegates, I think the human was telling the truth. As they raced through the station, emergency lights began to activate, bathing the corridors in pulsing red. In the distance, they heard the first sounds of commotion, shouting voices, and the distinctive whine of energy weapons being discharged. The peace conference, Tara said breathlessly. It's under attack. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the station as alarms blared. The twins ran through the corridors toward the sound of weapons fire. Other delegates were emerging from their quarters in confusion and fear. Everyone back to your rooms, Mira shouted, her translator broadcasting in multiple languages. The station is under attack. Tara checked her wrist device, trying to access the security systems. Communications are being jammed. I can't reach station security or our ship. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a group of armed figures in black combat suits. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets, but their weapons were pointed directly at the twins. Voidian representatives, one of them said in a mechanical voice. You will come with us. Mira's hands began to glow with blue defensive energy. I think not. The attackers opened fire. The twins moved with incredible speed, dodging the energy blasts while returning fire with their own natural abilities. Their superior reflexes gave them an advantage in the narrow corridor. Tara disabled 2 attackers with precise energy bursts, while Mira engaged in close combat with another. But there were many enemies, and they kept coming. "We're outnumbered," Tara called to her sister. "We need to retreat." Suddenly, 3 rapid shots came from behind them. The attackers at the rear of the group fell, revealing Lieutenant June standing in a side corridor, a compact weapon in his hands. "This way," he called, gesturing toward an open maintenance hatch. The twins hesitated for only a moment before following. June sealed the hatch behind them, just as more attackers arrived. "What is happening?" Mira demanded as they moved through the narrow maintenance tunnel. "We're under attack by the Black Star Syndicate," June explained, moving quickly ahead of them. "Professional mercenaries, hired to disrupt the peace conference." "How do you know this?" Tara asked suspiciously. "Earth intelligence detected unusual ship movements near the station last week. That's why I was investigating." June paused at a junction, checking his small scanner. "They've taken control of the main security systems and communications." Mira's antennae twitched with irritation. "If you knew of this threat, why didn't you warn station security?" "We tried," June said grimly. "Our warnings were ignored. Some believed it was just humans trying to seem important. Others," he gave the twins a pointed look, "others might be involved with the attackers." "Impossible," Tara said. "No major power would risk open conflict like this." "Someone would if they could blame it on humans," June countered. "We're the newcomers, the unknowns, perfect scapegoats." They reached a small junction room filled with control panels and displays. June quickly accessed a terminal. "Station security has been compromised," he reported. "Most of the security personnel are locked in their barracks. The attackers are methodically taking control of key areas." Mira looked at the human with new respect. Despite her prejudice, she had to admit he seemed competent. "What about the delegates?" she asked. June pulled up the security feed. "Most are secured in their quarters, but the main target seems to be..." He zoomed in on one section of the station. "The Voidian diplomatic suite," Tara finished for him. "Our father is there." Mira turned to leave immediately, but June caught her arm. Even though she could easily break his grip, she paused. "Rushing in will get you killed," he said quietly. "These are professionals with advanced weapons. We need a plan." "We don't need help from a human," Mira said coldly, pulling her arm away. June didn't flinch. "Maybe not, but your father might." The sisters exchanged glances, communicating silently through their mental link. "We should work together," Tara finally said aloud. "Temporarily." June nodded and pulled up the station schematics. "The attackers have blocked the main routes to the diplomatic section, but there's a maintenance shaft that runs beneath it. It's narrow and dangerous, but it should bypass their forces." "How do you know so much about this station's layout?" Mira asked suspiciously. "I memorized the schematics before arriving," June said simply. "Standard procedure." "For a spy," Tara noted. "For someone who likes to stay alive," June corrected. He checked his weapon. "We need to move quickly. The longer they have control, the stronger their position becomes." As they prepared to leave, the station shuddered from a distant explosion. "They're disabling the emergency shuttles," June explained, "cutting off escape routes." The twins again exchanged silent thoughts. Despite their distrust of humans, this one seemed to know what he was doing. And right now, they had a common enemy. "Lead the way, Lieutenant," Mira finally said. "But understand this, if you betray us, your death will be slow." June actually smiled slightly at the threat. "Fair enough. And if you abandon me to save yourselves, I'll understand. It's what I'd expect from Voidians." The casual insult surprised both sisters. Most species were too intimidated by Voidians to speak so boldly. "You are either very brave or very foolish," Tara observed. "Humans are often both," June replied, checking the corridor before gesturing them forward. "It's kept us alive so far." As they moved through the maintenance tunnels, emergency lights casting red shadows across their faces. An uneasy alliance was formed. The twins, who had never considered humans as equals, now found themselves depending on one for survival. And deep in the station's central control room, the leaders of the attack watched their progress on security monitors, setting a trap for the unlikely trio. The narrow maintenance tunnel stretched before them, dimly lit by emergency lights that cast everything in a red glow. Lieutenant June led the way, moving with surprising agility for a human. The Voidian twins followed closely, their blue skin appearing almost purple in the crimson light. "The diplomatic section is 2 levels up," Jun said quietly, checking his small handheld scanner. "There are at least 8 attackers guarding the approaches." Mira watched the human with growing curiosity. He moved differently than she expected. Economical in his movements, always aware of his surroundings. Not the clumsy, noisy human she had heard about. "How did you learn to move so quietly?" she asked as they paused at a junction. Jun glanced back at her. "I grew up in the mining colonies of Ceres. Low gravity, narrow tunnels, dangerous equipment. You learn to watch your step, or you die." "Mining colonies?" Tara asked. "Not a military academy." "That came later," Jun replied. "But the best soldiers often come from the hardest places." They continued through the tunnels, occasionally stopping to avoid patrols of black-suited mercenaries. Jun's knowledge of the station's layout proved invaluable as he led them through service areas that didn't appear on standard maps. "Most species rely too much on technology," he explained when Tara commented on this. "They forget to look for the simple paths, the routes maintenance workers use when systems fail." A sudden explosion shook the station, causing dust to rain down from the ceiling. The lights flickered briefly. "They're getting impatient," Jun muttered. "Not a good sign." They reached a vertical shaft with a ladder leading upward. Jun tested it cautiously. "This will take us directly below the diplomatic quarters," he said. "The final approach will be the most dangerous part." As they climbed, Mira noticed something strange. "You're bleeding," she said, pointing to a dark stain spreading on Jun's sleeve. "It's nothing," he replied without slowing. "Caught some shrapnel earlier." "Human stubbornness," Tara said dismissively, but there was a note of reluctant respect in her voice. At the top of the ladder, they faced a sealed maintenance hatch. Jun examined it carefully. "It's locked from the other side," he whispered, "and likely guarded." Mira stepped forward. "I can force it open," she said, her hands beginning to glow with blue energy. Jun shook his head. "Too noisy. We'd lose the element of surprise." He pointed to a small panel beside the hatch. "Can you interface with that? Override the lock without triggering alarms." Tara nodded and placed her hand on the panel. Voidians could connect directly with most electronic systems, a biological ability that had given their species a technological advantage for centuries. "I can bypass it," she confirmed, "but it will take time." "We don't have much," Jun warned, checking his scanner again. "There's movement above us. They're searching systematically." As Tara worked on the lock, Mira studied the human more closely. "Your species has been in space for only 2 centuries, she said. "Yet you seem adapted to it." Jun shrugged. "Humans adapt quickly. It's our greatest strength." "Not strength or speed or intelligence?" she asked with a hint of condescension. "Those help," Jun admitted, "but they're not enough when facing superior opponents. Throughout our history, humans have survived by adapting faster than our enemies expected." The conversation was interrupted as Tara successfully unlocked the hatch. It slid open silently, revealing an empty corridor above. "Clear," Jun whispered after peering through. But not for long. They climbed into the corridor, which was wider and better lit than the maintenance tunnels. The diplomatic quarters were just ahead, past a security checkpoint that now stood empty. "Something's wrong," Mira said, her antennae twitching. "This is too easy." As if summoned by her words, a group of 6 mercenaries appeared from a side passage. Their leader, taller than the others with distinctive red markings on his black armor, pointed at them. There they are. Take them alive. June reacted instantly, pushing the twins toward cover as energy blasts scorched the wall behind them. They took shelter behind a structural column, but they were pinned down with limited options for escape. We're trapped, Tara said, returning fire with her own energy blasts. The mercenaries were well trained, advancing in coordinated patterns while maintaining suppressive fire. They were clearly professionals, not common pirates. I count 6 of them, Jum said calmly, checking his weapon. Bad odds. Not for Voidians, Mira replied confidently. Jum looked at her. I've seen Voidians fight. You're impressive. But these aren't ordinary mercenaries. They're using Drachnid combat formations. Tara's eyes widened slightly. You recognize Drachnid tactics. Like I said, Jun replied with a grim smile. Humans study everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 small metal spheres. When I throw these, close your eyes and cover your ears, he instructed. The twins nodded. Jun took a deep breath, then rolled out from cover long enough to throw both spheres toward the advancing mercenaries. The twins shielded their senses just before brilliant flashes of light and deafening sound erupted in the corridor. Jun was moving before the effect fully dissipated, firing with precision at the disoriented mercenaries. 2 fell immediately, but the others recovered quickly. Their leader, seemingly unaffected by the stun devices, targeted Jun directly with a high-powered weapon. Mira saw the danger and moved with incredible speed, tackling the human just as an energy blast passed through the space where he had been standing. They tumbled together behind a different column as the wall behind them melted from the intense heat. Thanks, Jum gasped, looking genuinely surprised by her intervention. We still need your knowledge of the station, Mira replied pragmatically. The firefight intensified. Tara had taken a position further down the corridor and was holding her own against 2 mercenaries, but the leader and his remaining soldier were advancing on Mira and Jun's position with methodical precision. We can't stay here, Jun said urgently. They're calling for reinforcements. As if to confirm his words, the sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. They were about to be caught between 2 groups of enemies. I have an idea, Jun said, looking up at the ceiling panels. But you'll have to trust me. The twins exchanged glances, making their decision in an instant of shared thought. What do you need us to do? Mira asked. For the first time since they'd met him, Lieutenant Jun smiled broadly. Something very human. Improvise. The corridor was filled with smoke and the smell of burnt metal after their narrow escape. Jun's plan had worked. Using the twins' energy abilities to overload the environmental systems had created enough chaos for them to break free of the ambush. Now they had taken refuge in an abandoned research lab several corridors away from the fighting. Tara bent over Jun, examining the wound on his arm where an energy blast had grazed him. The human skin was burned, revealing red flesh underneath. Stay still, she ordered, pulling a small medical device from her belt. This will help with the pain. We don't have time, Jun insisted, though he winced when she touched the injured area. Your father and the other delegates are still in danger. You'll be no help to anyone if you bleed to death, Mira said firmly. She was checking the lab's security systems, making sure they hadn't been followed. Tara pressed the medical device against Jun's wound. It glowed blue as it applied a healing gel and sealed the injury. The human relaxed slightly as the pain diminished. Your healing technology is impressive, he commented. Standard Voidian field medicine, Tara replied. Though I'm surprised by how quickly your body is responding to it. Most species don't integrate with our biotech so easily. Human adaptability again, Jun said with a small smile. Our cells are remarkably flexible. Mira had found a computer terminal and was attempting to access the station's security network. The system is locked down, she reported with frustration. I can't reach our father or see what's happening in the diplomatic section. Jun pulled a small device from his pocket. It was scorched from the fighting but still functioning. Try this, he said, handing it to her. It might help you bypass their security protocols. Mira looked at the device skeptically. Human technology helping Voidian systems. That seems unlikely. It's not about better technology, June explained. It's about unexpected approaches. They'll be guarding against Voidian hacking methods because you're known for them. They might not be looking for human techniques. Reluctantly, Mira connected the device to the terminal. To her surprise, it created an opening in the security barriers. It worked, she admitted, sounding genuinely surprised. I have limited access now. She pulled up security footage from around the station. Most areas were in chaos, with delegates confined to their quarters and security personnel fighting scattered battles with the black-suited attackers. Look at their movement patterns, Jun said, pointing to the screen. They're not just attacking randomly. They're herding everyone away from the central command hub. Tara studied the footage. You're right. This isn't just about disrupting the peace conference. They're taking control of the entire station. Mira managed to access communications logs. There were transmissions sent from the station right before the attack began, she said. Encrypted, but I might be able to trace the destination. As she worked, Joan examined the attackers more closely on the security feed. Those aren't standard mercenary tactics, he said thoughtfully. The precision, the coordination, this is military training. Black Star Syndicate members are often former military, Tara pointed out. Yes, but look at these formation patterns, June insisted. The way they secure each junction, the communication signals. He fell silent, his expression darkening. What is it? Mira asked, looking up from her work. Those are Arcturian elite guard tactics, June said quietly. I studied them extensively. The twins stared at him in shock. Impossible, Tara said. The Arcturians have been our allies for centuries. Maybe not anymore, June suggested. Or maybe certain factions within their government have other ideas. Mira had finished her analysis of the transmissions. The signals were sent to a location in Arcturian space, she confirmed, her voice hollow with disbelief. But that doesn't make sense. Why would they attack now? Why risk open war? June moved to the terminal and pointed to the conference schedule. Look at what was planned for tomorrow. The signing of the new galactic charter, including human membership in the council. Understanding dawned on the twins' faces. The Arcturians have always controlled trade routes in the Orion Arm, Tara said slowly. Human expansion threatens that monopoly. And if humans were blamed for an attack on the peace conference, Mira continued, we'd be excluded from galactic politics for decades. June finished. Maybe centuries. Tara looked at the human with new respect. You knew this was coming. That's why you were investigating before the attack. June nodded. We had intelligence suggesting a plot, but no proof it was Arcturian. Most of Earth's leadership didn't believe the threat was real. They thought it was just military paranoia. Why would they doubt their own intelligence services? Mira asked. Because humans are still new to interstellar politics, June explained. Many of our leaders are eager to be accepted, to prove we belong at the table with older species. They didn't want to believe that established powers might see us as a threat. But you did, Tara observed. I'd studied history, June said simply, both human and alien. New powers are rarely welcomed by old ones. Mira was still processing this revelation. The Arcturians have been our trading partners for 10 generations. My father considers their ambassador a personal friend. The best deceptions often come from friends, June said quietly. You trust them, so you don't look closely at their actions. The station shuddered as another explosion rocked a distant section. The lights flickered momentarily. They're getting desperate, June noted. Something's not going according to their plan. Mira managed to access another security feed, this one showing the diplomatic quarters. What they saw made all three of them freeze in shock. The Voidian delegation, including the twins' father, was being held at weapon point by black-suited attackers, but standing alongside the mercenaries, giving orders, was a figure they all recognized. The Arcturian ambassador himself. "We need to move now," Jun said urgently, "before they realize we know the truth." The twins stood together, their earlier distrust of the human forgotten in the face of this betrayal by a supposed ally. "How do we reach them?" Tara asked. "All direct routes will be heavily guarded." Jun's eyes gleamed with determination. "I have a plan, but it's very human, dangerous, unlikely to succeed, and completely unexpected." Mira nodded firmly. "Then it's exactly what we need." "This plan is insane," Mira whispered as they crawled through the narrow ventilation shaft above the diplomatic quarters. The metal was cold beneath their hands and knees, and every small sound seemed dangerously loud. "That's why it might work," Jun replied from ahead of them. "The Arcturians are logical thinkers. They expect logical responses. This isn't logical." Tara, bringing up the rear, couldn't hide her concern. "Attacking 16 armed mercenaries with just the 3 of us isn't merely illogical. It's suicide." Jun paused at a junction, checking his scanner. "We're not going to fight them directly. Remember the plan." The plan, as Jun had explained it, was simple in concept but complex in execution. While studying the station schematics, he had noticed that the environmental systems for the diplomatic section ran through a separate control grid, a security measure to ensure that important negotiations couldn't be disrupted by station-wide problems. "There," Jun whispered, pointing to a small access panel. "That controls atmosphere, temperature, and lighting for the rooms below." Tara reached past him and placed her hand on the panel, connecting to its systems with her natural Voidian abilities. "I have access, but what exactly am I looking for?" "Can you see the emergency protocols?" Jun asked. Tara's eyes widened slightly as she understood. "The fire suppression system. I can trigger it remotely." "Not just trigger it," Jun said. "Modify it. Can you change the chemical mixture?" Mira watched the human with growing respect. For a supposedly primitive species, his thinking was remarkably creative. "I can," Tara confirmed, "but I'll need time." "We don't have much," Mira warned, checking her wrist device. "The Arcturian ambassador is preparing to make some kind of announcement to the station, probably blaming humans for the attack." Jun nodded grimly. "Work quickly. Mira and I will prepare the second part of the plan." While Tara focused on reprogramming the fire suppression system, Jun and Mira moved to a different section of the ventilation system. Below them was a small storage room adjacent to the diplomatic quarters. "This is where we'll enter," Jun explained, carefully removing the vent cover. "The room should be empty." Mira peered down into the dimly lit space. "And if it's not?" Jun gave her a small smile. "Then we improvise." They dropped silently into the storage room, which was fortunately unoccupied. Jun immediately moved to the door, pressing his ear against it to listen for movement outside. "2 guards," he whispered, patrolling the corridor. Mira joined him, her sensitive hearing confirming his assessment. "Their patrol pattern is precise. 15 seconds between passes." Jun removed 2 small devices from his pockets. "These are sonic disruptors. They'll disorient anyone within range for about 10 seconds. Not long, but enough if we move quickly." Mira took one of the devices, examining it curiously. "Human technology continues to surprise me." "We've had to be creative," Jun said. "When you can't match your opponent's strength, you find other advantages." Through their mental link, Mira felt Tara's presence. "She's ready," Mira announced. "The suppression system has been modified." Jun checked his weapon. "Tell her to wait for our signal. We need to be in position first." They waited for the guards to pass, then slipped into the corridor, moving quickly toward the main diplomatic chamber. The station's red emergency lights gave everything an ominous glow. As they approached the chamber, they could hear voices inside. The Arcturian ambassador was speaking. "Regrettable that human aggression has forced us to take these security measures. Once we broadcast evidence of their plot to disrupt the peace conference, The Galactic Council will have no choice but to revoke their provisional membership. June and Mira exchanged glances. They had arrived just in time. Now, June whispered urgently. Mira sent the mental signal to her sister. Seconds later, alarms blared throughout the diplomatic section as the fire suppression system activated. But instead of the usual fire-extinguishing chemicals, the system released a dense fog that filled the rooms rapidly. Chaos erupted inside the chamber. Through the confusion, June and Mira made their move, entering through a side door with their sonic disruptors ready. The modified fog wasn't harmful, but it reduced visibility to near zero and interfered with electronic equipment. The mercenaries, suddenly unable to see or communicate effectively, began shouting conflicting orders. June moved with surprising confidence through the fog, seeming to know exactly where to go despite the poor visibility. Mira followed close behind, using her natural senses to avoid obstacles. They found the Voidian delegation secured in the center of the room. The twins' father, Ambassador Koro, was bound to a chair with energy restraints. "Father," Mira whispered, quickly working to disable the restraints. "Mira." Ambassador Koro looked shocked. "How did you?" "No time to explain," she interrupted. "We need to move quickly." June was already helping the other delegates. "Head for the emergency shelter on level 3, he instructed them quietly. "Station security has regained control of that section." The fog was beginning to thin as the ventilation systems fought to clear it. They could hear the mercenaries regrouping, their leader shouting orders. "We need a distraction," June said, looking around quickly. Ambassador Koro, now free from his restraints, stepped forward. "I can help with that." He raised his hands, generating a powerful energy field that pushed back the thinning fog, creating a wall of swirling mist. "Impressive," Jum commented. "One doesn't become Voidian ambassador without some useful skills," Koro replied with dignity. As they guided the delegates toward the exit, the Arcturian ambassador suddenly emerged from the fog, an energy weapon in his hand. "You," he snarled when he saw June. "I should have known humans would be behind this interference." "Actually," June replied calmly, "you're the one who will be known for interference. We've transmitted evidence of your plot to all delegations and to the Galactic Council." The Arcturian's face contorted with rage. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at June, but before he could fire, a blue energy bolt struck him from behind. He collapsed to the floor, revealing Terra standing in a doorway, her hands still glowing from the energy discharge. "No one threatens my allies," she said firmly. June looked at her in surprise. "Allies?" Terra nodded, a small smile on her blue face. "Anyone who risks their life to save my father and exposes a plot against galactic peace has earned that title." As station security finally arrived to take control of the situation, Mira looked at the human with new understanding. Perhaps humans weren't as primitive as she had always believed. Perhaps their different kind of strength was exactly what the galaxy needed. 3 days after the attack, Nexus 7 space station had returned to a state of cautious normalcy. The damaged sections were under repair, and the peace conference had resumed, though with heightened security and a very different atmosphere than before. In the main observation lounge, Mira stood by the large windows, watching distant stars. The view calmed her mind after the chaos of recent events. She sensed her sister's approach before hearing her footsteps. "Father is asking for us," Terra said, joining her at the window. "The final voting session is about to begin." Mira nodded but didn't move immediately. "Have you seen Lieutenant June today?" "He's with the human delegation," Terra replied. "Since exposing the Arcturian plot, he's become something of a celebrity. Even the Drachnid ambassador wanted to meet him." A small smile crossed Mira's blue face. Strange how quickly things change. 3 days ago, we considered humans barely worth acknowledging. And now one of them has saved the peace conference, Terra finished. "Father says the council is reconsidering humanity's position in light of recent events." The twins walked together through the station's corridors. Other delegates nodded respectfully as they passed. The sisters' role in stopping the attack had elevated their status considerably. The main conference chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. At the center table sat the most powerful delegates, including Ambassador Koro. The Arcturian seat remained conspicuously empty, its delegation having been confined to their quarters pending investigation. The human delegation was present in full, with Lieutenant June standing respectfully behind their leader, Ambassador Su. When he noticed the twins entering, he gave them a small nod of recognition. Station Administrator Jin called the session to order. Before we continue with scheduled proceedings, the Council wishes to address recent events. Ambassador Koro has the floor. The twins' father stood, his tall blue form commanding attention from the entire assembly. His voice was deep and carried easily through the large room. 3 days ago, this station was attacked in an attempt to disrupt the peace we have all worked toward. The plot was designed to appear as human aggression, with the goal of excluding Earth from our galactic community. Murmurs spread through the chamber as many delegates learned the full truth for the first time. This plot failed, Koro continued, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through cooperation between species. My daughters worked alongside a human officer to uncover the truth and protect this assembly. All eyes turned briefly to the twins and to Lieutenant June, who stood straight-backed and calm under the attention. I have lived for 3 centuries, Ambassador Koro said. In that time, I have seen many new species join our galactic community. Some arrived with advanced technology, others with unique biological abilities. Humans bring something different, but no less valuable. He gestured toward the human delegation. They bring adaptability, resourcefulness, and a perspective untainted by thousands of years of established thinking. Where we see limitations, they see opportunities. Where we follow tradition, they find new paths. Mira watched June carefully as her father spoke. The human's face remained composed, but she could see a hint of pride in his eyes. Therefore, Koro concluded, I formally recommend that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately, rather than the provisional status previously proposed. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates appeared supportive, others concerned. The Drachnid ambassador rose to speak. With respect, Ambassador Koro, while the human's actions were admirable, one individual's bravery does not qualify an entire species for council membership. Before Koro could respond, Terra stepped forward unexpectedly. May I address the assembly? Administrator. After receiving permission, Terra spoke clearly so all could hear. 3 days ago, I believed humans were primitive, their technology simplistic, their methods crude. I was wrong. She looked directly at June. Lieutenant June showed us something important. True advancement isn't measured only by technology or biological capabilities. It's measured by how a species thinks, adapts, and overcomes challenges. Mira joined her sister. The Arcturians nearly succeeded because we were predictable. They knew how Voidians would respond, how Drachnids would react, how station security would operate. They didn't anticipate human unpredictability. The chamber had fallen silent, all delegates listening intently. If we exclude humans from our council, Mira continued, we lose that perspective. We become more predictable, more vulnerable. Diversity of thought is as important as diversity of biology or technology. The voting session that followed was tense but decisive. By a narrow margin, Earth was granted full council membership, with Lieutenant June specifically commended for his actions. After the session, the twins found June in a quiet corner of the reception area, looking somewhat uncomfortable with all the attention he had received. Congratulations, Lieutenant, Mira said. It seems you've single-handedly elevated humanity's status in the galaxy. June shook his head. Not single-handedly. We succeeded because we worked together. Our father has requested that you serve as liaison between Earth and the Voidian Collective, Terra informed him. He was impressed by your abilities. I'm honored, June replied sincerely. Though I'm just a soldier, not a diplomat. Mira smiled slightly. Perhaps that's exactly what's needed. Old thinking created this conflict. New perspectives might prevent the next one. Later that evening, as the human delegation prepared to depart, the twins stood with their father in the docking bay. Lieutenant June approached to say goodbye. "The next council session is in 6 months on Earth," he said. "I hope you'll both attend." "We will," Mira assured him. "I'm curious to see this planet that produces such resourceful individuals." June smiled. "It's not as technologically advanced as your homeworld, but I think you'll find it interesting nonetheless." As the human ship departed, Ambassador Koro looked thoughtfully at his daughters. "You've both changed your perspective considerably since arriving on this station." "We've learned an important lesson, Father," Terra replied. "Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes the most valuable isn't the most obvious." Mira watched the ship until it disappeared from view. Humans may lack our natural abilities, but they make up for it with creativity and courage. Perhaps we have more to learn from them than we realized. The three Voidians turned to leave, walking together through the station that had been the site of both betrayal and new understanding. The peace conference would continue, but something fundamental had changed in the galactic order. A new species had proven its worth not through dominance or advanced technology, but through resourcefulness and unexpected strength. And for the first time in centuries, the future of the galaxy seemed less predictable and more hopeful than before.